Hello, folks. Welcome to TechArt EDU Live, version 2 of this is going to be our Houdini lecture for the week. So, welcome to all things Houdini and all things Houdini-ness. I hope everyone is excited about the Houdini stuff. Just to reiterate on things, because this broadcast is originally coming out of kind of like UCF and so forth. I just want to remind everybody that about the Houdini. It's not really a challenge. They've asked UCF and FIA in particular to make an application to become a certified Houdini school, and I've agreed. And I told them that we would try to put something together. So the details of that is that you have until basically July 1st in order to create some kind of Houdini piece. Or if you want to create multiple versions, for your portfolio, that's okay too. What I'm going to do is that after July 1st, I'm going to take everyone's videos that they've created and I'm going to put them all together. I'm going to mix them together into one big presentation reel, and then I'm going to send that off to Side Effects. I'm going to fill out all their paperwork, explain who I am. Yes, I know how Houdini works and so forth, and we're going to send that application to them, and then probably like around September or October they might tell us, hey, you are an official Houdini school, and then hopefully they'll be showering us with Houdini licenses. And for your guys' sake, I really hope that we get in. I'm really looking forward to that, and it'll be definitely time well spent, and hopefully, keep your fingers crossed, we can get it going. Last time we applied, the last time I did apply, we were not accepted, but not because of the lack of quality, just because we didn't have, only 3 students submitted the material, and that wasn't enough, and I think they basically need about 5 students' materials, and last time we had 5, we got in no problem, so they should be able to work. So I'm going to see if I can create a Facebook page just for this Houdini certification verification, and I'll put all the information and all the detail there, and we can kind of keep that going. So look for that coming up in the near future. And I'm going to double check. I'm going to mount that on top of the Orlando Houdini users group. And so I'm going to use that webpage for all things associated with the UCF becoming a Houdini school in combination with the Orlando Houdini users group. And hopefully we'll get all kind of information about the Orlando Houdini users group. We can get UCF students, the undergrads involved with this. We get the FIA grads. Anyone who wants to contribute, I'm going to do what I can to get in. So hopefully, keep your fingers crossed. That's what they're doing. So that's very exciting. So we are going to talk today about simple procedural trees. Now, I do emphasize that this is simple. This is not complicated. I wanted to make sure that you guys know how to walk before we can run. So if you can, keep me informed with how you like this presentation and you like where the direction is going, and then we will evolve the result of today's presentation into something more sophisticated if this is something you want. We could take an entirely new approach. Procedurality, there are as many methods to doing anything as there are as things under the sun. And oh, golly, I forgot to do something very important for this presentation. Oh well, c'est la vie. That's how things goes. But let's get going with the presentation. All right, there we have the Houdini network here, and you guys can't see me, but I am taking off my shirt because it is extraordinarily hot in my bedroom, and my wife does not like air conditioning. She was born and raised in Saigon, and she hates air conditioning, and so therefore it is very hot in our house. Okay. Would this be good for animators? And what was I say? Okay, this would be good, just as good for animators as well. In fact, probably the strongest the strongest pieces of the last portfolio that we did get accepted as a Houdini school had I would say the strongest pieces were from animators. So yeah, by all means, animators are definitely, absolutely, completely welcome, especially if you're going to be doing visual effects. In my humble opinion, a visual effect that isn't animated is just a pretty picture. So animation is visual effects, and visual effects is animation, and vice versa. They are one and the same. You can't have one without the other one. So yes, absolutely, this is good for animators. So let's get on with the show for our simplistic trees. Now I have to do a call out to Alejandro Perez Sanchez. He provided the foundation for this lecture. You can follow this. Lecture, or some kind of like this lecture. I'll look a little bit familiar with the stuff that he has, but I'm kind of going at from a different perspective because I want to make sure that you guys understand taxonomy. And what do we mean by taxonomy? Taxonomy is the breakup of things. And not only are we going to be dealing with taxonomy, is that we're going to be dealing with digital assets. I need to go over with you guys the basic, simple, fundamental structure of digital assets so that you guys create visual, stunning, or useful digital assets in your sleep. And they are relatively easy once you get past the kind of like the learning curve hub. But they're very, very helpful, and you'll see how helpful they become hopefully by the end of this lecture. So let's talk about the tree taxonomy. What kind of stuff are we talking about? Well, what goes into a tree? You know, for most trees, and actually some bushes, what do you start off with? And I don't have any visuals, so I apologize that visuals are not here. I forgot to prepare them. But you start off with the trunk. The trunk of the tree is the basic spine of the tree. And this gives the overall shape and feeling of the direction of the tree. So the trunk is the kind of the spine of the tree. This gives the overall shape and direction of the tree. And it's also going to have the widest, well, it's going to be the widest tube-like structure. Okay, and what kind of parameters do we have for this tree? Well, we need to show like how twisty or how kinky the tree is, how bound up it is, like and if there is some kind of twistiness, and how much twistiness, and how many like little points of articulation. How many little twisty points do we want into it? The more twisty points we have, the more twisty it's going to get. So we have our trunks. That's the first primary portion. And then we have our limbs. Our limbs they're kind of like mini trunks coming out of them. They're not quite as big as the trunks, and they are not quite as long as the trunks, but almost. So really, the limbs are almost a duplication of the trunks, but the trunks are coming off of the sides. I mean, the limbs are coming off the side of the trunk. So that's the kind of relationship between them. On top of that, then we have our branches. Our branches are even smaller limbs, and really the branches are the branches are really limbs off of are limbs off of the limbs themselves. So they're almost like, it's almost a fractal-like nature of where you have the trunks, the limbs, and the branches. They're almost all duplicates of each other, but they keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller, so they keep iterating, so it's almost like a fractal-like that. What really kind of breaks the whole fractal structure are the leaves. Now the leaves get mounted onto the branches. And the leaves can have various shapes and so forth, but for this simple example, we're only going to deal with one shape of leaf in order to that we can work with fancier shapes and fancier renderings and how to bring it into UE4 and into the next lectures. So really what we have here are trunks, we have limbs, we have branches, and then we have leaves. Now each of those have parameters. Typically, the trunk has a length, and the trunk has an overall width, and the trunk has an overall number of twisting, the trunk has a amount of twistiness and the number of twisty points. Now the limbs, they inherit the twistiness from the parent, because like if you put the kind of like twistiness, it's in this type of tree. If it's in the trunk, it's in everywhere. So it inherits that twistiness from the parent or from the trunk, but it also is going to have its own length, and it's also going to have its own width. And the same thing with the branches. The branches are going to have their own width, they're going to have their own length, and they're going to have their own kind of like distribution. Now the leaves are going to have their own color, they're going to have their own scale, and they're going to have their own kind of randomness associated with. So we have randomness almost existing at 4 levels: the trunk, the limbs, the branches, and the leaves. And then we're going to incorporate all that as parameters inside of our digital asset. So with that said, let's get things rolling along with how to create this. So like all other projects, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new foliage project. So come over here to File, and then go to New Project, and then I'm going to set the destination to someplace different here, because I'm going to go on to someplace else. I'll go to a new place. Okay, TechArt Houdini Live. Okay, and then I'm going to create this as I'm going to call it foliage demo. Okay, foliage. Well, actually, we're going to do it Houdini Live. Actually, I'm going to get rid of that. So this is a Houdini Live, and I'm just going to call this, the name of my project is Foliage Demo. Okay. Hopefully I'm spelling foliage right. If I'm not, then, oh well, so sue me. Okay, but I'm going to go ahead and accept. Okay, so I've created a new project, and I'm immediately going to save this project off, this scene off, do my job, and I'm going to call this Simple Tree. And I'm going to call it 01, just because I want to make it the first one. And if we might make this into a sophisticated tree, I don't know what that's going to happen in the future, but I'm just going to save this off as Simple Tree. Okay, cool. We have a simple tree now. All right, very cool. So we have our simple tree object. We have everything ready to rock and roll. So let's start off by dropping in a new. Yeah, I better do it this way, or else I'm going to pay for it. Let's drop in a new geometry, and let's call this Simple Tree. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop into my Simple Tree object. Okay, we are. So what we're going to do here is we're in the Simple Tree is, since we're going to start off with a taxonomy of a trunk and then go on to our limbs and then our branches and our leaves, we're going to start off with the trunk first. And so we're going to start with just basically a line. So I'm going to drop down a line sop. Right there. Okay, we have our line right in there. Okay, I have my grid turned off. I'm going to see if I can turn this on. Markers, grids, we have field guides, markers, geometry, visualize. Oh, grid, here we go. Grid, display orthogrid. Okay, there we go. All right, cool. Now let me see it. Okay, as we can see, what we have here is a simple line. And I'm going to open up the parameters on this. And we're going to make sure that the primitive type is polygon. The origin is at 0, 0, 0. And its direction is 0, 1, 0. For those of you who are saying, okay, why is it 0, 1, 0? Well, that corresponds to the x, y, z coordinates. And so this is a vector. This is the vector at which it's pointed at. So it means that's pointed up in the y direction. So here we have our y direction pointed up, and our line is pointed up. And we're going to double the length of our line. So I want the length, I'm going to make that equal to 2. And then we have 2 points in here. And so how do I know I have 2 points? I'm going to turn points on right here for the display. And you can see 2 little dots there. There's our 2 points there. So here we have is the basis of our trunk. And I'm going to change the points. I'm going to change this over to 5 right now because I think we need more points in order to get kinking around with. All right, so I'm going to append a point jitter. So point jitter. Okay, I'm going to click that, and my line goes 8 nuts. That is okay. And we're going to reduce the scale on that for just a wee bit so that it's not so much. But as you can see, my trunk, it's no longer at the origin. So we have to change that around a little bit so that we only want to manipulate the points that aren't grounded. So in order to do that, we're going to insert a group range stop between the line and the jitter. So I'm going to drag this off here, and I'm going to look for a group by range stop and drop that in there. And then I'm going to change the group name to trunk group. Trunk group. I'm going to change my group type to points because we want it only during points here. And I'm going to put the display on there. You'll see that it stayed basically where it was, but now they all turned yellow. So what I want to do is I want to make all of these yellow except for the one right at the base here, because that's the one that we don't want to do the jitter on. And so to start, we're just going to make this a value of 1. And that kind of like more or less does it. All of our points are in the trunk group except for our base. And now we know that the base is going to stay in place. So how do we apply this? We're going to drop right into the jitter group, or the point jitter. And then for our group, we're going to pull down on this little menu here. And then we're going to grab trunk group. And then we're going to put the display on. And we see the base stayed right where it's supposed to be, but the jitter kept on moving. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase this jitter just a wee bit and make it like 0.5. And you can see it's kind of really kinky there. I'm going to change my seat around because I'm going to see if we can get some kind of other values that aren't so wacky. Okay, sure. Why not something that looks like this? You could change the seat around. Ooh, this one's not good. That was not good. So whenever you're playing with the seed, you're always going to get radical changes, pretty much guaranteed. All right, so that's pretty good. So this is pretty good. For those of you who are in the know, this is randomness, and this is not noise. If this actually was noise, we would actually be able to dial this in, but that's a whole other issue. If you tech artists, though, look over our last lecture if you want to know about noise. Okay, cool. So we've got our trunk here, but it's only 5 points. We want this to be smooth because whoever saw a tree trunk that is this jaggy. So what we're going to do here is going to append a resample stop. We're going to drop the resample stop. We're going to put the display in there. As you can see, it resampled it down to all that and made it a lot smoother. That's good. That's exactly what we want. And so once we have this resample here, it's a lot smoother. Let's go ahead and append a polywire. Polywire, here we go. Okay, I'm going to turn that on. And now we can see that it created a tube right around this. Okay, and then we have, all we can do is like, okay, we've got the wire radius, but the number of divisions, right now it's 4 divisions, so that means it's kind of like a square across. For the type of purposes that we want, let's just double that and leave it to 8. If you want to change that, you can change that at a later time, but we changed it to 8, so this is a little bit rounder. And I'm going to turn off my points. So that's what we're looking at. Okay, but the base is still pretty much at 0. So the wire radius, and we're going to leave the wire radius at 0.1 for now. And just leave that. We can make an adjustment later if you want. And then we have our poly wire, so let's append a color to it. Because this is the trunk, we need some color. Right? Okay. We've got the color. We'll put the display on there. And so for the color, I've got these values typed in ahead in there. I'm going to go 0.1 and maybe 0.05 and 0. Okay, so we have kind of like a dark, drab, olive green looking dealio here. And then I'm just going to finish this off by typing in an output SOP. I always like to finish with an output SOP because that tells me that, yes, this is definitely the output. Furthermore, I like to make sure that my output SOP has a different color associated, knowing that it is the end of the line. And typically the end of the line means green for me, that means it's go. So once I've got that selected, I'm going to hit the C key, and that brings up a little color swatch. And I am going to grab a new groovy green color, and that colors my little SOP there green. And I'm going to hit C, and that's going to make it disappear. Aha! So also, I'm going to change the shape. The shape is just too ordinary. This is the output. This is the big deal. This is the big explosion. So I'm going to make it more exciting. So instead of the C key, I'm going to press the Z key for you Canadian folks. I'm going to hit Z, and then I'm going to choose one of these icons for my final SOP. Okay, let's go with this one. This was kind of a nice, dynamic, explosive finish. So there it is. I'm going to hit the Z key to get rid of that, and there we go. All right, so we've got our beginning, we've got our end here, and so I'm going to also make sure that my input, or my basic start of everything, is a different color as well, because I want to know where my grid or where my logic flow actually start from. So I'm going to press my line, because this is the kind of start. I'm going to hit the C key. I'm going to make this yellow. I like making my starts yellow, because that kind of gives me a good indication of where things start and stop. All right, let's keep things clean. And so I'm going to select all of these, and what we're going to do is going to create a network box around them. Now, you could do that, create the network box multiple ways. You could, just once you've selected your nodes, you could go ahead and press this little icon here, which will create a network box, or you could just hit Control O. Oops. Cancel. What is it? Is it, oh, it's Shift O. Shift O, and that creates a little networking box around it, and I'm going to double click the top there, and I'm going to call this Trunk Network. All right. Okay, we have our trunk network. Okay, very good. So I'm going to go ahead and save this scene file. Save. All right. Then we know we're not going to lose our work. So we've got the basic trunk down. We have enough work now to start creating our digital asset. So some people wait till the very end to create the digital asset. I like to create my digital assets while I'm creating the geometry. It tends to be a little bit more of an organic process, because when I'm dealing with the input, I like to change my mind around a little bit. And when I have the digital asset, it allows me to kind of play around with things a little bit and monkey around with the shape of things. So I'm going to return back up to the object level. And then we have our geometry object here. I'm going to right-click that. And when I right-click, I'm going to choose Create Digital Asset. So I'm going to create the digital asset here. And a little dialog window comes up. And it says, okay, what do we want the operator name to be? I just want it to be Simple Tree. And I want it to match here, so I want to capitalize T. And my operator name is, I'm going to keep it capital S, Simple Tree. That's my own little naming convention. I know it's a digital asset because both the initial words are capitalized. And then I'm going to change my destination. So I'm going to change my library here. I'm going to choose here, go and click Job. And then I'm just going to leave it at simpletree.hda. I'm going to click Accept. And then, so I should say, oh, I want a job, I want it HDA. So I'm going to put HDA simpletree.hda. Okay, I'm going to click accept. Bum, bum, bum. We got to wait for it to finish. Okay. Oh, great. Not responding. Ha ha ha. Okay. It says their parameter. Okay, blah blah blah. Okay, just click no changes on that and just ignore it. Okay. The window that pops up here afterwards is called the type properties. The type properties is where we control all of the behavior for our digital asset. You notice that this tells us where the thing is located, and it tells us where the definition is going to be, and it tells us our name. We can change our icon. We can tell which version. In fact, let's call this version 1. We can control the number of inputs and the minimum number of inputs, the maximum number of inputs, and we can control the maximum number of outputs, but we're going to leave that as default right now. Now, what we're going to spend most of our time is in parameters. Now, you'll notice that our digital asset, here we are, we're looking at the digital asset right here. Notice that the transform, render, and miscellaneous are right here. Right here is the definition for those parameters. Here we have our root, which is the top. Here's our transform, our render, and our miscellaneous. So all of the parameters that we're looking at right here are set and controlled with this interface right here. This is the control switch. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a new folder onto here. So I'm going to go grab folder, and I'm going to drag this up right so it's sitting right under root, and so it pops down right here at the bottom. And I'm going to call this the name. I'm going to call it tree folder. And for the label, I'm going to call it simple tree. All right, that's good. So we've made a simple change, so let's go ahead and apply this. Okay, click no changes. Okay, notice here that, oh, where did it go to? I must have put it in the wrong place. So I'm going to, hello. Grading, okay, miscellaneous. I must have put it under a child of any of these others bad boys. Simple tree. Miscellaneous. Huh. It disappeared. I do not know where it went. So, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create it again. So I'm going to create it again, but before I create it again, I'm going to put some information in it first. Maybe it disappeared because I didn't have any information. So I'm going to drag this on here. Oh, you can't see? Oh, golly. Hold on. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Emma. Hold on. And we will remedy that. Oh, okay. In this lesson. Oh, you can't see this? Okay, here we go. Okay, so according to this, well, you should be seeing the Houdini lecture. Okay, well, that's not fun. Now, thank you very much. My notes are actually obscuring my text, so I can't see the text that you guys are sending. But thank you very much for sending that. Let me see if we can find this. So let's see if all right, blah 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 blah. Okay, yeah, you guys can't see it because according to my live screen. Okay. Let's see. We can't see the windows. Okay, yeah, it's okay. You can't see. Okay, yeah, you guys. Sorry about all that. Okay, so you guys can't see it now. Okay, so a half hour went by. You guys haven't seen this. Okay, I'm gonna see if I can change this over. So here we have there. You guys should be able to see my ugly mug. And here, you guys see my mug is like been put over into the corner. And here is the, you should be able to see the digital work. Okay, could somebody send me a message either in the live chat or in Teams showing what is currently being seen in the display? So that's not a lot of fun. Okay. Okay, according to this, I have an excellent connection. Can somebody send me a message via Teams or in the text that explain what they say? No subscreens. Okay, do you see the only Houdini screen? Okay. Okay, let's see if we can change that around a little bit. Oh, you guys can't see the digital assets. I gotcha. Okay, I understand now. My bad. I know how to fix that. So hang on one second. Okay. Alright, so this window capture here. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of the okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to cancel this, and I'm going to say add just a display capture, create a new display. Okay. Okay. Now hopefully that has just created a whole bunch of chaos and noise, and hopefully you guys are seeing the chaos and noise. So how about this? As a pop-up window, can you see? Okay, so you should be able to see the little HDA window. I'm hoping, and like, yay, you can see it. Okay, great. Sorry for the confusion, gang. The joys of live entertainment. I'll have to remember that and prevent that from happening. I didn't realize Houdini was going to prevent us from seeing the little sub windows. Okay, cool. So once we created this is the type properties folder. Really, all we did here was I went into the parameters folder. Now I'm going to delete this. And all I did was I grabbed a folder from the parameters here, and I dragged it so that it's right underneath root. And so I'm going to change the folder name over to simple tree. Alright, so now we have the simple tree folder. And before we hit apply, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a label underneath it so that we know for sure. And so what I'm going to do is, where's my label? There's the label. I'm going to go grab it and put it under simple tree so we have something to show. And then for the main label, I'm just going to put tree control. And I'm going to put tree control right here. And then I'm going to hit another label underneath that. Where's the label? And then let's see what happens when we put this. I'm going to put globals because we're going to create some global parameters here. So I'm going to hit apply. Hit a change. Aha! Okay, tree control globals. Here we go. There's our content here. So okay, we're making progress. I'm going to take a little looky-loo to see if you guys are all following. Okay, I see it now. Okay, nothing, okay, good. You should still be seeing everything, so we are still good to go. Okay, great. Now let's, now we have this in place, so I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so you guys can see it. And then I'm going to drop into my simple tree. All right, so what we're going to do is what we are going to do, this is called exposing controls. We're going to expose the parameters that are inside of the SOPs here, and we're going to expose them up into the digital asset level. So we're going to start off by the point jitter, and we notice we see a seed in here. This is, you know, how I manipulated the seed and it kind of changed the overall look of everything. So I'm going to go grab the seed. I'm going to actually just grab the parameter name right here. Left mouse click, drag it, and then drop it right under simple tree. And there it is. You'll see that the name is exactly the same. Okay, so we have the seed going in there, and there we go. So we have our seed parameter. So this is going to control the amount of kink for the randomness for the jittering. Okay, that's good. So let's go ahead and grab the color, because, you know, sometimes the bark might be brighter than the others. So I'm going to go and grab we've got the color SOP, and I'm going to grab the color parameter, and I'm going to drag and drop this right underneath simple tree, and so suddenly we have seed and color right in here. Okay, good. We're making some speed. We're making some progress. Now we've got the seed, we've got our color. So let's manipulate the twistiness. Now the twistiness we're going to abstract a little bit, but that's going to come basically from our line and our point jitter. So we're going to go to the line. What we want to do is grab the we're going to grab the length. Oh, these are the globals. So what we have here, we're going to grab the points, and we're going to drop that under simple tree. Oops. I'm going to hit Control Z. I put it in the wrong place. But here is points. I'm going to grab and just drag that so it's under a simple tree and not underneath the root. There. So points. And I'm going to change the name. So I'm going to change the name to twistiness. And then I'm going to change the name here to twistiness. Okay. And now from the point jitter, I'm going to grab the scale here, and I'm going to drag it under simple tree. And I'm going to change the name to twisty amount. So twisty amount. And let me change the spelling on that. Twisty amount, and then I'm going to change the label twisty amount. All right. Now I click apply. Again, no changes. Okay. Now I'm going to close this. We're going to go back to. I'm going to go back up to the object level. Now look at our digital asset. Our things have changed around. These are the global parameters of it. So here we have is our global bark color. So we could go and change this if we wanted to make. Right now our bark color is kind of like a dark brown. So if we wanted to lighten things up a little bit, I'm going to go over here to value, and I'm going to just push this up a little bit. And if I wanted to desaturate it a little bit, if you look at it that way. So there it is. I've changed the bark color, so it changed there. Okay, so that changed there. If we wanted to change the twistiness of the amount and make it more twisty and more kinky, I'm going to add the number of, and that's just kind of like making things go back and forth. So I'm going to change my seed in order to kind of like wrap things around. Okay. No. Okay, yeah, let's go with something like that. Okay, now there we are. We're looking at like a wild, wacky trunk. And now for the twisty amount, we might do this to scale it big or smaller. So I'm going to scale it just a little bit smaller. So although it's changed to that. So now you can see we can kind of dial in the parameters now by just dialing in the parameters of our digital asset. And so this is one of the reasons why I like creating my digital assets as I'm creating the object, because then we can follow along with the progress of the shape as we are developing it procedurally. All right, cool. I'm going to right-click on the simple tree and then go Show Asset Manager. Oops, not the Asset Manager. I want the type properties. Okay, we've got the type properties, and I'm going to condense these. So we've got the simple tree. So now I want to focus just on the trunk folder, because these are things that are just going to manipulate the trunk. So I'm going to grab my folder and then drag it under simple tree. And then I'm going to add this under here for trunk folder. And for the label, I'm going to just label it as trunk. Okay, we've got our trunk folder in there. So let's drop into the simple tree. And let's go, and from the line SOP, we want to control its length. Now, our length shape is really just a parameter, not necessarily of the entire tree itself. It's not a global parameter. It's really just for the trunk itself. So I'm going to grab length and drop this right underneath trunk. Okay, so that, and we've got the length, and I'm going to keep the length right here, but I'm going to call the name here, I'm going to call it trunk length. But I'm going to leave the term length in there because it's a good parameter to look at and so forth. All right, now from the polywire SOP, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the wire radius, and I'm going to drag this underneath trunk. And I'm going to leave the name. I'm going to change this to trunk thickness. And for the label, I'm going to change it to trunk space thickness. Okay. Now we have that good. Now if I hit apply, no changes. Now if I click accept, this makes my window go away, no changes. Now if I go up, now we can see, oh, where's my stuff? Okay, so my trunk is where is it? Show type properties. It should have been a subfolder. So the tree is, okay, it's hiding from me. It's not quite there yet. Okay, I'm going to kick Houdini in the proverbial butt. All right, it's not showing me my interface the way I want it to. Okay, time to get out the big hammer. I'm going to click accept here, click no changes, and then this is a little bit of a Houdini voodoo here I'm showing you guys, but I promise you guys Houdini voodoo, and I promise to deliver. Right click on the simple tree digital asset and click match current definition. Okay, what that does is you see that the little lock here, it was open before, it's closed now. So that means that the digital asset is locked. That means we can't change anything into it. If we were to double click this digital asset now, you'll notice that everything is gray in here. We can go and we look at the individual parameters, but everything is gray. We can't actually change anything. Okay, this is how you tech artists prevent all of your artists from wreaking havoc to your work. You make sure you create it all in digital assets, you lock them, and then give them off to your artists, and your artists can't muck with them. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and don't be afraid, but click it and then hit delete. Okay, it's gone. It didn't go away, gang. Okay, we had saved this before, and the digital asset is now an entity outside of Houdini. Okay, how do we get it back? So let's go ahead and hit the tab key, and look where it says digital assets. We see simple tree is now a digital asset. Click simple tree, and there's our simple tree exactly where it was, and ha, there's my trunk folder sitting right underneath there, looking beautiful, just as I expected it would be. Okay, this is called kicking Houdini in the butt. All right, but it's still locked. Not a problem. Right click on the simple tree digital asset. Click allow editing of contents. Don't show this to your artists. Okay, click allow editing of contents. Suddenly my lock goes from a gray locked to a pink open block. So that means that we can now go ahead and edit on the inside. Okay, you see the nodes here are now exposed. We can now manipulate it and ready to rock and roll. All right. So we said before that our limbs are very close to our trunks. Okay, cool. So in that case, let's click on the trunk network, and then I'm going to press the Alt key, and then I'm going to drag this, and that creates an exact duplicate of everything that I created before. And so I'm going to change this title to Trunk Network, and I'm going to change this to Limb Network. Okay, so now we basically have a duplicate of the Trunk Network duplicated into the Limb Network. Okay, so let's go ahead now and create our limb parameters. We've created this, so I'm going to go up, back to the object level. I'm going to right click to my type properties, and then I'm going to go scroll all the way to the bottom there, and see where it says trunk, and then there's length, and then trunk thickness. I'm going to press that trunk, and press that, and then I'm going to hit Control C to copy. I'm going to press Simple Tree, and I'm going to hit Paste. Okay, so it moved and pasted it right there. And so I'm going to make sure that it moves it right underneath trunk. So I'm going to grab the second trunk folder, and I'm going to drag it so that it's right underneath there at the bottom. No, that's not quite where I want it. I'm going to drag it up there. No, that's not where I want it. Let's put it underneath there. Yeah. Okay, there it is. It's now right underneath the trunk folder, but it's at the same level as the trunk folder. So I'm going to first change this, because it's confusing as all dickens. Change this to, instead of trunk, I'm going to go to limbs. Okay, that should make a little bit more sense. Our limbs folder is now at the same level as our trunks folder, and they're all sitting under the simple tree. Now let's go ahead and change these variable names. Now the length, there's now no longer trunk length. What we want to deal with is the limb length. And so I'm going to change the name from trunk length to just limb length. Limb length. Okay, that changed the name. Now, in a digital asset, you can change the defaults. And so the defaults are stored here in the Channels tab. If we click Channels tab, we see the default is sitting right here, and we're looking at the default value of our channel, wherever that's pointing to. Now, I don't want 2 because 2 is just too much. So I'm going to mark that down to about, my limbs are about 1.25. So that's going to make it a wee bit smaller. Okay, so that's my default value. And I'm going to do the same thing to the thickness here. I'm going to go ahead and press trunk thickness, and I'm going to change the name of my variable. Instead of trunk thickness 2, this is going to just be limb thickness. Limb thickness, and I'm going to change this to limb thickness. Okay, and I'm going to change its channel value over, and now instead of 0.1, I'm going to make it a whole lot smaller. I'm going to go 0.05. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is just click Apply, and you see what this did was it created a new folder for us next to trunk, and then we are sitting on limbs. And so now we have these new variables to play around with. I'm going to go ahead and close my type properties here, and then go back to my simple tree. Okay, now let's go ahead and modify our limb network with all of the groovy stuff that we just created. So I'm going to first click Line here, and see where it says length. I'm just going to press the length, and then see it says trunk length, CH, open parentheses, double quotes, / trunk length, quotes, close parentheses. In human terms, what this means, CH means channel value. Okay, which channel value do we want? Okay, we want whatever's here sitting within our double quotes. And this is the path of our parameter that we want to see, our channel value. And what this means is / trunk length. This is old Unix for the command line, so what this means is go up one level and then grab the trunk length channel. Okay, we don't want the trunk length channel, we want the limb length channel, so change this to limb length. And you'll see it tries to complete it for us. Oops, that's one too much. There we go. All right, now we're going to drop down here to our group range. And where it says trunk group, we're going to change this over to limb group. Because we're no longer dealing with trunk, we're dealing with limbs. L-I-M-B. And if we were curious to see how this is going, so let's just take a look at what we've got here. We've got our line sitting right here, and our line coming back up here. If we were to hit the length, we would see it's 1.25, and it's still 5 points, so we're all doing good. We've got our group range. If we were to click the information, okay, our limb group has 4 elements in it, which is just what we wanted here. It's blank here. Now let's go over to our point jitter. Now our point jitter, we don't want the group to be the trunk group anymore. We want it to be the limb group. And now we're going to go down to our poly wire, and our wire radius, I'm going to click the channel, and it's going to change it to its expression. Instead of trunk thickness, we're going to change it to limb thickness. All right, and so I'm going to click it all the way to color, and there we go. There we have a very kinky limb. All right, we'll just leave it for there for now. So we've got this all going, it's looking groovy, but now what we want to do is we want to copy the limb to the trunk. We want to make sure that this limb is sitting on this trunk. Okay, how do we do that? We're going to pull this down, and we're going to go and drop that, and drop a copy stamp. Okay, we've got a copy stamp, and we've got the input zeros coming from our limb, and our input for this goes to the resample, because we want what the curve looks like. We want to get all these points here. We want to copy a limb at every one of these points. I'm going to drag that up in, and I'm going to put the display on copy. Oh, okay, chaos. Okay, no problem. We can handle the chaos. But before we deal with the chaos, I'm going to change the name to copy limbs to trunk, so we know exactly what's going on. And I'm going to expand my network so that my copy limbs to trunk is now part of that network. Okay, we have chaos here, but it's not a problem. So what I'm going to do is, we've got too many limbs. There's just too many limbs going on there. We need to reduce the number of copies that are duped there. So what we're going to do is we are going to we're going to grab another group from this before going into the poly wire, and we're going to resample the amount. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of room. I'm going to move these down just a tad. And so I'm going to add another group by range SOP. So I'm going to right click in here and type in group by range. All right, we have a group by range, and I'm going to sneak that right in here in between. And then where it says group name, I'm going to change this to trunk limbs, because what we want to do is identify where on the trunk all the limbs are going. So trunk limbs is the name of my group. Let's see what this looks like. Okay, it's there. I'm going to turn on my points. Okay, you'll see that the whole thing is collected there. Okay, that's way too many points. That's way too many limbs. We're going to need to reduce that. Not a problem. First, what we're going to do is we're going to, well, say like, okay, we're going to prune this. So like say, okay, we don't need maybe the first 5 of these nodes here. So So where it says start here, I'm going to drag this off, and then we see that, oh, it grabbed the whole thing. Why? Okay, here, because if we go over here to group type, it's primitives, change this over to points, and then you can see that everything but the first two is selected. So I'm going to move this up to where it says about 5 or 6. Yeah, let's leave it at 6. Right there. Okay, cool. And now it says, okay, we've got all of these are going to be limbs. Still too many limbs. We need to reduce that. Let's take maybe 1/4 or 1 out of every 4 of these. So we can modify this in this range filter where it says select 1 of 1. Well, that's 1 of 1, that's everything. So let's change this to maybe 1 of 4 here. Okay, now you can see that, lo and behold, we only have 4 limbs selected here. Those are the 4 yellow or golden nodes that are selected. All right, cool. So that means 4 branches are going to come out of here. Nice. Now, what I like to do is for this, you'll notice that the last selected node here is right at the very tip. Okay, that's cool. But if we didn't want that, we wanted the trunk or the trunk to extend for just a little bit, what we could do is hit the offset, and you'll see that that changed where the location of those 4 are located. We could set it up here, and yeah, that's basically the same thing. Okay, so we can have an offset of 0 and an offset of 4. Exact same thing. Okay, now for the copies, this copy trunk, instead of coming from the resample, I want to come from the group range 3. So I'm going to drag this over to here, pull that over to there, and then I'm going to set the display onto copy trunks. It's still not quite ready yet. And that's because, I'm going to hit this point to turn off the points. What we have to do is we have to tell which template group to use. So where it says template group, I'm going to tell it to use my trunk limbs. And now here it is, trunk limbs. And now you see we only have 4 limbs on this trunk. All right, cool. Now they're all pointed wacky-like, and they're going in the wrong direction. So let's start off by going into the rotate X channel, and then I'm going to just muscle this over here to be about, oh, it's not going to show. Okay, make sure to turn off transform cumulative, and now it'll manipulate each one independently. So drag this off to some place that looks good. Okay, so this is probably like around 60 degrees or so. All right, that looks fine. Now what we want this to do is rotate Y. But if we rotate Y around here, then they all rotate together. We want them to rotate independently. In fact, we want them to rotate using each one randomly. Okay, so what we could do is say, okay, here what we're going to do is we're going to type in here. I'm going to click in here. All right, in order for you guys to see, this might be too small to see. So instead of just typing in this little window here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the cursor in here, select everything, and then hit Alt-E. And Alt-E opens up a little window that I can open up and I can expand, and then hopefully you guys can see this over a little bit. So I'm going to type inside this window here. So I'm going to get rid of that 0, and I'm going to type rand, which is short for random. I'm going to open and close parentheses. And then I'm going to say $PT, which gives me the point number. And I'll say $PT times, oh, I don't know, 58.05. Okay, we got 58.05. All right, cool. And so rand returns a random point value between 0 and 0.1, or 0 and 1. And what we did here is we just offsetted the point number by some kind of random number. And so we just changed our seed up a little bit. But it's going to go between 0 and 1, and we want it between 0 and 360. So I'm just going to multiply that by 360. Now, in order to test this out, to see if what I'm typing in is going to work, I'm just going to hit the apply key. And we see that our branches kind of like all look a little do-wacky. Okay, good enough. I didn't get any warnings. I'm going to click accept. Okay, now I'm going to go and click that channel again. I'm going to click rotate, and I'm going to muscle over here, and you'll see that this channel gets exposed. But I want to change this random value in here, the seed value. If I was to go ahead and just select just this number, then I could use the Houdini scroller to middle mouse click this number, and then I can move this around. Oops, that's not the number I wanted. I want this number. And I want something that's going to be equally distributed, kind of like kind of like coming from all over the place. I have a hunch that this is about as good as I'm going to get. All right, let's get that. But that gave us a whole brand new number. But what if we wanted to play with this number? And we wanted to play with this number in our digital asset, because sometimes, we just don't like the way that the limbs look. We say, okay, we want some better distribution. Okay, what we're going to do here is we are going to put in a variable that's going to contain this random number. Okay, this says plus. That's not going to work. I would say minus. Okay, is that better? Okay, cool. That works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Alt-E again. And then I'm going to replace that 59.25. 9.25. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace that with another channel reference. So I'm going to type in CH, open and close parentheses, and inside the parentheses I'm going to put open double quotes, close double quotes, and in between that I'm going to put / limb capital seed. Okay, that doesn't exist yet. And when we hit apply, we're going to get errors. Okay, don't worry about it. This variable doesn't exist yet, but that is okay. We are good to go. We are just fine with that, because what we're going to do now is I'm going to accept it anyway, and what we're going to do is we're going to create that variable right now. So I'm going to go back up to the object level. I'm going to right click on the simple tree, go to the type properties, and I'll scroll all the way down to the bottom here. Now for the limbs, I'm going to go grab a float value. Where's my floats? Here we go, float. I'm going to drag this right underneath limbs, and then I'm going to go to my parameter, and I'm going to type, this is limb seed, L-I-M-B, capital S-E-E-D, and then I'm going to call this limb seed. Now I'm going to give it a default value. Now we like the value of 59.25 pretty good, so I'm going to say 59.25. Okay, so that's fine. Okay, so now we have a create variable. So let's go ahead and tell the digital asset to create this variable. So I'm going to click accept. Okay, cool. So what this is, let's go into simple tree. And now look at this. It's no more error, and our object has now all twisted around here. But we didn't see that. Why? Well, it's because the digital asset hasn't been to the... So let's tie it all together and take a look at it. So I'm going to drop in from my color SOP for my trunk network. I'm going to drop in a merge SOP. Okay, the merge SOP combines geometries, and I'm going to go from merge here from my color SOP, and then from the copy SOP, I'm going to drag that in here, and then I'm going to drop my merge SOP in between the color and the output, so it's right there. And I'm going to put the display on my output. Oh, I lost my, okay, go to merge, drag that over to the copy, and there are my trunk with my limbs sticking right out of it. Okay, if we go back up to the object level, now, if we want to play with the limbs and the limb seeds, we can adjust the length of our limbs. Okay, that looks good. We can control the thickness of our limbs. Whoa, that's way too big. And we can control the seed that manipulates this, and so we can control the distribution of it. Okay. Alright, that looks kind of wacky, and there's a little bend in there, but that's okay. Let's just do that for now. Whoa, we've got some overlap here. I don't want the overlap. So I'm just going to keep on looking until I find a reasonable value. Now, let's see if what happens if I go to 59.25. Ah, that's something good. That works. Alright, cool. So, we've got our trunks. We have our limbs. So what are we going to create now? What's next in the taxonomy? Our branches. So let's go ahead and keep the branches. Oh, don't worry. All the work is being done inside the digital asset. Every time we process our type properties and click apply or click accept, it saves it to disk. So we don't have to worry about it. This is pretty much auto-saving. Okay, now I have an issue with the fact that, okay, when you have limbs here, as you go up the tree length, don't the limbs kind of naturally get smaller? These limbs are actually just as long at the top as they are at the bottom. Okay, get ready, folks. You know, get ready for some old school. This is like ancient school Houdini magic. Nobody understands Houdini like this anymore. But this is really cool. I'm going to show you some old school Houdini voodoo here. Let's drop into Simple Tree. Let's go and old school this thing. Okay, so here we have is the copy, the stamp stop. If we click onto that, now if we go into stamp here, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a new variable that we have, suppose we want our limb length. Now we already have a limb length variable here, so let's create a new one here that's like a variable limb length. So I'm going to call this, let's call this variable limb length. I might be confusing myself. Okay, so I've got my variable limb length. That's a big old name. Well, let's just go for it right anyway. And then we will keep the value and put the value of 1 for now. It's a good place to go. Okay, now let's go to our line sop here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to multiply our limb length by our variable limb length. But we have to tell it that we want it to come from this guy down here. So there's a command that we can use to call this, and that's called the stamp function. So I'm going to say stamp. Okay, let me see if I can, before we go into the, let me Alt-E, and then hopefully you guys can see this. So I'm going to say stamp, open and close parentheses. Okay, now stamp takes three parameters. One is the location of where the information is. One is the actual channel is, and where is a variable name. So we are getting this from the copy limbs trunk. So the first parameter is double quotes, and we're going to go inside of this, and we want // and then we want the copy limbs to trunk. So I'm going to look through here. Copy limbs to trunk. I'm going to hit enter and enter that in there. Okay, good. Now I want to know what variable to use. And if it's called, I think it's called variable limb length. So I'm going to say open quotes, double quotes, go in there. I'm going to drop in here. Is it going to complete it for me? No. So variable limb length. Okay, cool. That's going in. And the last parameter here, I'm going to put a comma here. And I want it to be parameter of 1. So in case anything goes wrong, it uses the value of 1. Okay, I'm going to test it. Okay, click apply. Okay, I didn't get any errors. So that means it's working. Okay, I'm going to click accept. Okay, so now we've got our length being adjusted by this variable here. So our line here, the line length, is now controlled by this variable limb length. But we only have a value of 1. So that doesn't really give us a variable thing that kind of changes that over the length of the trunk. Okay, so now we're going to apply some really nutty Houdini magic here. Okay, I'm exploiting Houdini eccentricities here. All right, and for this, what we want to try to do is we want to get this point information coming from here, but what we want to do is give this some kind of parameter here that will give us the basically some kind of variable that basically starts off large and then gets small as it gets up. Okay, so let's try to go ahead and we're going to put in, since we covered vex last week, we're going to use an attribute wrangle right here. So I'm going to drop in an attribute wrangle. So attrib wrangle, and I'm going to drop that right into here. Okay, so I'm going to leave this over the points here. So I'm going to drop in a variable name. Okay, I know for sure that copy looks for a variable called $age. How do I know? Well, if I was to click this copy stop and then hit this little question mark, the Houdini documentation pops up. Okay, you could read all that, blah, 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 blah. This shows what the parameters do, blah, 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 which is okay. Okay, now for the inputs, now it says these are local variables. And we have CY and CY. Okay, PT. This is something we've seen before, you know, $PT, that's the point number. It's also using age. Now, but it says the seconds a particle in the template has been aligned. You say, wait a second. We're dealing with points on a limb. We're not actually dealing with particles here. This SOP isn't going to use age at all. So let's borrow that and use age to our own advantage. So we're going to pirate age in this attribute wrangle. So I'm going to click attribute wrangle, and I'm going to set my age parameter to something that I can use. So I'm going to say at age equals, okay, and now I want to be the proportion. In other words, I want this number, this age value, to start off large and get smaller as we go up. And we can do that by dividing the point number, so $PT num, this is the current point number, and we're going to divide this by the number of points. So at num PT is birth size. Okay, PT divided by num PT. Okay, I'm going to hit Control Enter to see if it works. Okay, now I like to go and test to see if my vex is working. So I'm going to come over here where it says plus, and I'm a new pane type, and I'll go grab a viewer, and so, or an inspector, I'm going to do a geometry spreadsheet. Okay, it created my edge parameter, but it's all 0. Now, why is it all 0? Well, look at here, because point number, well, what is point number? Let's take a look at it. So if we were to look at this group range, if we were to turn this on, there's all the points. And so so we have 6, 10, 14. So what we're doing is we're trying to divide point number 6 by the number of points. And here we have 23. There's actually 23 points. So it's 6 divided by 23. Well, that should work, right? Well, remember that 6 and 23 are integers. And whenever you have an integer by an integer, an integer divided by an integer, what that results in is an integer. And we want a floating point. And so we don't want a floating point. So what we got to do is we got to convert this to a floating point. Okay, we can do that just by converting point number or num points. You're going to multiply that by, before we do the division, just times 1.0. All right, and I'm going to hit Control Enter. No errors. Hopefully everything's good. I'm going to go back to my geometry spreadsheet. Aha! Here we have is our age. It has floating point values. But we got a bit of a problem. If you remember here, our numbers kind of go from bottom to top here. If we turn on the numbers, we see that our numbers are going from 0 all the way up to 22. But if we come up to here, we say 0. Hey, that's our smallest number. And we come all the way up to 22, and that's our biggest number. That's the exact opposite of what we knew. Not a problem. Since this has been normalized between 0 and 1, all we have to do is subtract it from 1, and we should be good to go. So I'm going to go as just 1 minus, here, 1 minus all of this gobbledygook. Hit Control Enter. And you see what that did was it flipped my age parameter upside down. So now the limbs at the bottom of the tree are my bigger numbers, and then as we get closer to the top of the tree, they get smaller. Okay, cool. We are making progress. So what does that have to do with this? Okay, now we have the age variable that's sitting right here in our attribute wrangle. And so we're going over here to the copy limbs. So what? Big deal. Okay, then all we have to do then is put $age into here. All right, that's fine. So what does that result in? Okay, I'm going to turn this on. Okay. Look at this, folks. Everything is, okay, so okay, this doesn't look like much, but let's play with these values a little bit. I'm going to go click up. And so for my limb length, and we got to go in here. So here we are, copy the limb length. Okay, if we click this, I want to see the value here. Okay, it's still coming through at the value of 0. Okay, so why is it attribute? Oh, that's because if we go into stamp inputs, I forgot to put stamp inputs, because stamp inputs propagates that value all the way up to the top here. Now we see that my values have a, okay, that's really wild. Okay, we're going to have to make modifications to that because we suddenly got control. Suddenly these things are way too small. Let's go then and modify it just a little bit. So here we have the limb seed, the length. Let's knock these down, and the limb thickness. Let's make this a wee bit smaller. Okay, we're going to have to change our limb seed to get something that is a little less wacky. Okay, so we're going to have to modify. Okay, so if things are still a little bit too long up top. They're smaller, but maybe not small enough. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to make it even smaller. So I'm going to go back into my tree trunk. And now here, we know that it goes from the age, goes somewhere between, well, let's see, click this. Okay, we know the age goes between 1 and 0. We want it to go even faster. We want it to go add. How can we change that over? Well, what we can do is I know that if we were to take the square root of this, we would make this go at now an exponential speed. So SQRT I put that in age there. I put that in parentheses. Ah, that managed things up a little bit. Okay, so that made things a little bit smaller and a little bit more organized. Things are still a little bit too long for me, so I'm going to return back up to the limb length, and I'm going to modify my length down by just a wee bit to something that's a little bit more. Okay, so we're still getting wild, wacky seeds, so I'm going to have to adjust this even more. Something that's a little less wacky. Okay, because, okay, here's the problem. I'm getting this weird kink in here, and that's because if I go over my globalness, my twistiness, my twist amount, it's too much. And since my limbs are inheriting that, I'm going to have to reduce the overall amount of twisty amount. So let's go ahead and reduce the twisty amount, and I'm going to go ahead and knock that down. And that's going to make it look a whole lot more reasonable. Okay, good. Okay, that looks a lot more reasonable. That's not as dramatic as it was before, but it works good enough for demonstration. Alright, so there was a bit of Houdini voodoo magic there for you, because no one knows to pirate an existing parameter that is not being used, and you're using it for some other reason. Okay, that's a little exercise in resourcefulness. I'm going to file save just to save all this to make good. Okay, cool. So we've got our trunk and we have our limbs. What do we got to create next? We got to create our branches. So we're going to do the exact same thing to our branches that we did for our limbs. I'm going to go and grab my limb network, hit the Alt key, and drag, and now suddenly I've got a whole new network. I'm going to go ahead and change the name to branch network. Alright, so we've got the branch network hooked up, and so let's go back to our type properties and create our new variables. So I'm going to go up to the level, I'm going to right click and say type properties, cool this down, and now I'm going to get duplicates for this limbs, so I'm going to go in and select all of these, and I hit Control C, and then I'm going to click right there at the bottom. I hit Control V, and okay, limbs is not a child. Then let's change. Okay, let's change this to, instead of limbs, let's change this to branches. Okay, our branches folder is now a child of limbs. We don't want this. We want branches as a child of simple tree. So I'm going to grab branches, just drag this over here, and now it's an equivalent level of trunk, limbs, and we have branches. Branches, huh? Okay, dyslexia setting in. A-N, okay, good. Branches, good. So let's change these variables. Now instead of limb length, we want this to be branch length. And the channel here, we're going to change that from 1.25 to 0.75, because that's going to get a whole lot smaller. We're going to go over to limb thickness, and we're going to call this branch thickness. And I'm going to change this to branch. And its value, I'm going to make this one even smaller. I'm going to go to 0.2. And for this parameter, for the limb seed, I am going to change my limb seed. I'm going to call this branch seed. And I want this to be number 1. And I'm going to change this name over to branch seed. And I'm going to leave it just as it is. I'm going to hit apply. And now you see we've created now a third folder here for branches. Alright, sweet. I'm going to go ahead and accept, get rid of my type properties window. Let's go ahead and modify our branches. I'm going to go into here to our branch network, and I'm going to start right up here at the top. And so I'm going to go into my line 3 here, and now where it says, okay, we've got this long expression here, so I'm going to hit Alt-E to grab this, where it says limb length. I'm going to change, well, before I do that, I'm going to change this name from copy limbs to trunk. I'm going to copy branches. I better make that capital to stay consistent. Branches to limbs. All right, now let's go ahead and adjust this. I'm going to hit Alt-E. So I'm going to say limb length, and this is going to be branch length. And then stamp copy branches to limbs. I want this to be, branches to limbs. It already changed it for me. Thank you very much, Houdini. And so for the variable limb length, I'm going to change this to variable branch length. Okay, this doesn't exist yet, but we'll have to remember to change that to variable branch length. And I'm going to click apply. Okay, no warnings, so we're all good to go. All right, let's go back down to the group range, and we're going to change this limb group. We're going to change that to branch group. All right, and now our point jitter, and for the scale, for the twisty amount, the seed, okay, there's our seed amount. We're going to leave that as is. The resample, okay, that's exactly the same. The polywire, okay, we have our limb thickness. We don't want the limb thickness. We want our branch thickness. Okay, we have our branch thickness. Our color is the same. And now here's our copy branches to limbs. And so we go to the copy. And so let's we have the rotate. We're going to leave that at 59. We'll just see what happens with that. So let's look at this expression. Okay, so we have RAN plus PT, the limb seed. We want branch seed. Okay, we've got branch seed. Click apply. Okay, no complaints, accept. So now let's go over here to stamp and call this, instead of variable limb length, variable branch length. Okay, we're almost ready to go, but remember what we did last time? What we put in is we put in a group range and an attribute wrangle stop in there in between the polywire and the resample. Well, we're going to do the same thing again here. So I'm going to drag these. I'm going to select these three, drag them down. And then I'm going to grab my group range and my attribute wrangle. I'm going to shift select both of these, and then I hit Alt, and then I'm going to drag this over to here. Okay, now I'm going to hook up my group range. So my group range comes up into here, and my group range also goes into polywire. Okay, so let's double click this group range. Okay, so we have trunk limbs, so let's call this limb branches. So limb branches. Okay, limb branches. All right, that's fine. So we have a new group there going into here. So I don't know if this distribution is going to be right. Now let's give it a try and see what happens. Remember, our limbs now are going to be shorter, so this is going to change the overall behavior. How? I don't know. I'll just kind of like play around this and play it by ear. So I'm going to go into my attribute wrangle, and hey, I'm going to leave this exactly the same way it was, because we don't need to change that. And now what we're going to do is going to drag this over to here and drop it into copy branch to limbs. instead. Okay, cool. So let's just see what that looks like. Does this give us any problems? Okay, well, we've got a small little twig here. That's good. And it's giving me a warning. What's the warning? Trunk limbs is not a valid group name. Okay, so let's go into where we have trunk limbs. Oh, trunk limbs. Okay, this is from the template group. Remember, it's no longer trunk limbs. We changed that name over to limb branches. So I'm going to delete this and drag and drop this over to limb branches. There we go. So there is a branch that's been grafted onto the limb. Okay, I'm going to put this attribute wrangle as part of my limb network. All right, cool. So this looks like it could be working. All right, so now let's combine it all together. So we have copy the branches to this. Now we have to merge it with this. But what do we want to merge? Okay, we want to merge, okay, what we want to do is for every one of these limbs, we want to put in a bunch of branches. And so we want to put the merge in here before we actually copy to the trunk. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our merge right here. So I'm going to click on here, tab, merge. And I'm going to insert this one right in there. And now I'm going to click this merge here and drag this all the way over into there. And now I'm going to put the display right onto my tree. Okay, there we see limbs now being deformed by this. Now the limbs, they're not very kinky. And that's because they're a whole lot shorter. Let's see if we can make this a lot longer. Now the limbs are technically a lot shorter at the ends than they are at the bases, but there's a whole lot less limbs. Let's just see maybe what we could do. Let's get some more limbs here. So what we do is go to our group range SOP, and instead of selecting one of 4, what happens if we select one of 3? Is that going to give us some more branches? Yeah, that gives us more branches. And go 1 of 2. Okay. Okay, instead of 2 branches, we now have 4 branches. Okay, cool. Now, I don't think we're going to get any of the kinkiness back in here unless we change the kinkiness in there. But let's leave it for now because we're looking pretty good. We have a trunk, we have limbs, and we have branches. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. Thank you. All right. Now we could go ahead, and since we got this, we can go ahead now and dial this in. Let's see if we can get a little bit more kink into our thing. A little bit more think in our kink. And maybe make our branches just a wee bit longer. That's not going to do it. Okay, so I think we've got we got rid of all the kink. Give us some kink in here. It's not going to work. Okay, so this is going to take some minor tweaking from now on, but it's good enough to go. Well, let's go from here. So we've got our trunk, our limbs, and our networks. What's left? Then we got to create some leaves. Now our leaves are not fractal-like in structure. They're kind of a different critter altogether. Not a problem. But we are going to create them separately. So I'm going to go over here, I'm going to right click and then drop down a grid SOP. Okay, here's my grid SOP. I'm going to go ahead and put my display on here. And there she be. All right, I'm going to make sure I'm working with polygons. Check. Make sure I'm working with quadrilaterals. Check. Orientation, ZX plane. Check. Size. Okay, instead of 1010, I want 0.5, 0.5. So we want them smaller. All right, I'm going to get Shift H. Okay, there we go. So it's smaller, and I want it to be, there's too many points. I want a small number of points. 3, 5. Okay. Sweetness. All right. What I'm going to do now is basically old school modeling. In fact, this is not even old school modeling. This is like Socrates' old school modeling. And this is so old, this is like almost as old as your parents. But this is how we used to model in the ancient days before things like Maya and Blender and these other groovy rendering packages started to get involved. And it kind of looks something like this. I'm going to go ahead and change my display. Well, for conveniences, I want to see it orthographically. So I want to look at the front view and the top view. So I'm going to change this view over to 2 layers. So I've got the right view and the perspective. I'm going to change this over to the top view. And I'm going to change this over to the front view. Okay. I can't see it because it's flat. Not a problem. Alright. No worries. I'm going to work with just the top object right for now. So I'm just going to work with this and then go from there. Alright. What we're going to do is do some good old-fashioned vertex pulling. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to make sure that this node is selected. Check. I'm going to come over here to the Houdini window. Make sure that this is selected. I'm going to come over here to my component select, my geometry select, and make sure this is on points. Check. Now with the cursor inside of the display window, all I want you to do is hit enter. Okay, what that just did is that put me into interactive mode. And so we are now going to start pulling vertices. So let's select the vertices that we want. So if I select here, there's all our vertices. I'm going to drag, select all of these vertices, and then I'm going to just do a simple scale. Simple scale, so I can do this by pressing this little jack here, or I can hit the E key. So scale. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale this down to size. Ah, that's good enough. Alright, what we're going to do is we're going to get some leaf shape here. Okay, I also know that we want this to be aligned like the positive x-axis. So now we've got half x, negative x, positive x. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go to the arrow, select all of my vertices, and then I'm going to hit the T key, and that's going to give my translation, and I'm going to translate all of my points over to here. Okay, I'm going to shift this over so it moves over. Okay, good. We're doing pretty good. Now I'm going to just keep on modeling and making this into the shape of a leaf. Okay, I'm going to drag this point. I'm going to hit the T key for translate, and I'm going to pull this right about to there. Alright, cool. Come back over here, and I'm going to drag these over and hit T, and these get moved over right about to here, and I want to put them closer together, so I'm going to hit scale, and that's going to kind of push things together. Okay, I want things to go translate over just a wee bit more. I'm going to get it a little bit more rounded. Okay, good. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and grab these vertices. So let's go to the point. Grab these vertices. Hit the T key. Move this around. Okay, so this is about the widest point of my leaf. And let's go and then grab these points here. Okay, and then I'm going to hit the E key to scale. And okay, so I still feel this is a little bit extra wide here. So I'm going to go and select these vertices here with the E key, scale them down just a bit to make it a little bit rounder. And I'm going to move it over just a little bit. Okay, cool. Yeah, I know, it's not beautiful. But what I'm going to do is we're going to give this leaf some volume. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to select all of these points now. And now I've got all these points selected. Now I'm going to hit the T key to translate. But instead of translating in this window, I'm going to go and do my front window. And I'm going to move these up just a wee bit. Alright. And then I'm going to hit the shift. And then I'm going to drag just these amount, what's left. And I'm going to hit the T key. And I'm going to drag these up just a wee bit. I'm going to click on my points just so I can see it. Okay, there we go. There's a reference. And then I'm going to drag these points. Hit the T key. And then drag them up. Right. And then I'm going to just grab this one point here. And hit the T key. And I'm going to move this one up just a wee bit. Okay. Now we've got a nice straight line here. And now if we change this back to single view, and then change this back to perspective. Oh, it's flat. I don't want it to be flat. I want it to have a nice kind of curve shape to it. Or I want it to be bowed in, kind of like a U. So I'm going to go back onto my my two views. I'll change this back to the top view. And so what we're going to do, I'll click this. I'm going to grab these three, and then I'm going to grab these three. Shift select, that is. And now I hit translate. And now I'm going to push this up just a bit. It kind of bows this out. And move this up just a little bit. Okay. Is this going to work? I'm going to go from this. I'm going to go to my perspective view. Is this going to work? Yeah. It's not beautiful. What we need to do is actually we need to bring the tip up just a wee bit. So I'm going to click this. I'm going to grab my tip, hit the T key, and move it up just a bit. Okay. Yeah. It kind of looks like a leaf. Yeah. Maybe these are a bit high. So I'm going to hit the T key and lower these down a little bit. Push these down. Okay, over here. Okay, how does this look? Okay. It's not perfect. Okay, you can see why no one models like this anymore. It's not very precise. Okay, now this presented a little bit of a problem. There's a reason why, there's a good reason why nobody models like this anymore. And that is because, what do we have here? Take a look at this. These are all polygons. And here we have is a foregon and a quadrilateral. But when we look here, I don't think this is planar. And this foregon here, this is definitely not planar. Okay, this is bad. Now this is bad practice, and we as TAs have to set an example to all of our modelers and say, never to do this. So, what can we do about this as TAs? Well, we can step in here and say, okay, fine. I'm just going to subdivide this. So I'm just going to, I'm going to pen to my edit SOP. I'm going to grab a divide SOP. Let's just go divide. And I'm going to click display. All right, this worked pretty well. But I kind of don't like this extra edge here, so I'm just going to go and click as avoid small angles. Now this subdivided everything, and now everything is nice and planar, and we won't have any problems rendering whatsoever. All right, sweet. So what is our leaf? But we need some color. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. And I'm going to primitives, leave that as there. Okay, good. I'm going to add some color here, so I'm going to append to the divide, so I'm going to add a color SOP. Burn the display here, and so it's white. but I'm going to change this to something that's a little bit greenish. Let's go into the color browser. Here we go. All right, let's grab something like here. Why not? That's a very bright green. Let's bring its value down just a bit. This is a little bit just too green, but let's bring up its, bring down its saturation, its value back up. Okay. Sure, why not? Let's go with something like this. Okay, let's bring its saturation up. Okay, why not? All right, go on. All right, so we have a good green color. Now, let's go ahead and copy all of these leaves to our branches. Now, we're going to do this in the exact same way. We are going to insert we can't copy a leaf to every one of our branch nodes. Because look here in our branch nodes. We turn this on. We see we have too many points in here. What we're going to have to do is we're going to have to create a subset of that as well. So let's go ahead and insert a group range node. So group, whoops, group by range. I'm going to drop that in here. All right, I'm going to change the name of this is to branch leaves. Branch leaves. Okay, I'm going to put the display on there so I can see what I'm doing here. Well, let's just say that we have about, we want about 4 leaves out of this. So let's see, we want the start. We don't want the leaf to happen at the base. So, oops. Oh, we want, okay, for the primitives types, we want them to be points. Okay, so we've got the branches, 1 of 1, start. Okay, so let me just double check to make sure that we have this going. We have branch leaves. Okay, we have the branch leaves. Okay, they're all 0 and then 1, 1, 1. So we have got 5 leaves coming out of here. Let's see if we have 1 of 2. So that means we have 3 leaves here. Okay, let's just, maybe I want a little bit more. I don't want 5, I want 4. So what can we do about that? So I'm going to go over here to my resample. And where it says length of 1, 0.1, I'm going to change this to 0.075. Oops. That's not what I wanted. I hit Control Z, because that's not what I wanted. 0.075. Okay, then we have more points. Now we have more points to work with. Okay, cool. And now if we change this to 1 of 3, where we look at our spreadsheet, okay, we have 3. Now what happens if we move this to 2? Oh, we've got 4 objects now in here. Okay, that means we're going to have 4 leaves per branch. Okay, let's go with that for now. Sweet. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to draw here we're going to go a copy, stamp, here, and then for our input, for our other copy, we're going to drag this off into branch leaves. And we got this, okay. And now we have to go and change our template group. So we're going to have to turn off transform cumulative. We have to turn that off. And for our template group, we want branch leaves. Okay, so we've got 4 leaves per branch. Now this is still, these things are still looking a little bit big. And then we hit 0.4. So they're a little bit smaller there. Let's just go with this for now as a place to start. Okay, now let's change the, now let's kind of like change to kind of like put these up here to go around here. And if we were to turn the rotation, okay, something's not right. Okay, so this isn't rotating like we expected to. It's not rotating like we did the branches. Okay, so what we have to do is, in order to get this, what's going on here is that the copy stamp is going to where our normals go. Okay, let's take a look at our normals coming out of here. So we click this. We're going to say, okay, Houdini, here are our points. Show us our normals. Ah, no normals. So it's not doing what it's supposed to do. So we need to fix this a little bit. So we're going to do this by something called a polyframe sub. And we're going to insert it between the branch resample and the branch group. So I'm going to click in here, click out here, and I'm going to say a polyframe. Okay, so what this is going to do now is this polyframe is it's going to give us, we don't want the primitives, we want points. So this is going to give us 2 vectors. And for you tech artists, this might sound familiar. What we want is our normal, which doesn't exist now. We want a normal, and then we want an up vector, which is also known as the bitangent. So I'm going to turn off this tangent value and click on the bitangent, and I'll change this to value up. Okay, so now we have our points, and there, so we should have exactly what we need to this. So if we go over here to groups, come over here to copy, and now here we hit display. Now if we come over here to rotate Z, okay, this behaves pretty much like what we expect it to. Alright, now if we rotate Y, okay, so this rotates around the width of the branch just like we expected it to. Okay, so let's go and put an expression in here. Okay, I'm going to hit Control E to expand my expression control. I'm going to say rand $PT times, let's say dot 58.12. Okay, this is going to return a value somewhere between 0 and 1. We're going to multiply it by 360 to give us the full gamut. I hit apply. Okay, so now we have the leaves kind of like going all over the place, which is good. Now I also want to add some kind of twist to these leaves. So I want them to twist maybe 90 degrees one way or 90 degrees the other way. So if we rotate around the Z-axis, will that give it to us? Yeah, either this way or that way. Okay, so let's get some rotation out of there. I'm going to hit Control E to expand this. So I'm going to type in rand okay, we have $PT times some number, I don't know, 84.84 and times 180. Okay, so this is going to give us a value between 0 and 180, but we want it between negative 90 and 90. Not a problem, so all we have to do is subtract this from 90. So let's go ahead and subtract this from 90. So 90 minus, if we click apply. Okay, sweet. So we have these things twisting in all sorts of different ways. All right, cool. We've got our twist in our branches. Okay, there we go. So let's now, we've got our leaves being replicated. Now let's merge them into our branches. So we're going to do the same thing. We are going to merge our leaves in with our branches before we do our copy to the parent. So I'm going to grab a merge. Going to drag that in there. Okay, and then I'm going to drag my merge into my copy. Oh, okay. Here we have a situation. We have a little thing here. It says, okay, question, a warning. So let's take a look at this warning. It says a mismatch of some attributes on the input switch. Some attributes value may not be initialized to what's expected. Up, N, and UV. Okay. So what that is okay, we need those values coming through into here, but we don't need them coming into here. So do these have the U and the V and the up vector? No, all we have is C, D, and P. So what I'm going to do here is, this is kind of like a little bit of anal cleanup here. I'm going to do a, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Well, let's see what happens if we don't do that. We've got our leaves and we've got a capture here. Let's go ahead and turn on our tree. Okay, here's what the problem is. Look at this. Some of our limbs and some of our leaves are black, while others are green, and the green is not what we chose. That's not what we want. So what we have to do now here is kind of clean things up and get rid of those values in order to clean up some of this, clean up some of the schmutz. So what we're going to do is I'm going to drop in an attribute delete from this color side. So I'm going to go attribute delete, and I'm going to insert that in here. And so from our point attributes, what we got to do is got to get rid of our normal. Aha! That gave us all our color back. All right, great. I'm going to get rid of my up vector, and for my vertex attributes, I'm going to get rid of the view. I have no idea where that came from, but it's sitting on there anyway. All right, so let's go ahead, and I think this is just about it. So all we have to do now is expose or finish up our leaves. Okay, things are looking pretty good here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all these. I'm going to hit Shift O, create a network for it. I'm going to double click, and I'm going to say leaf network. Okay, we've got the leaf network coming here. All right, cool. I'm going to come back up over here into my sample tree. I'm going to right click and go to type properties. All right, so I'm going to add a folder now for leaves. So I'm going to drag a folder down here. I'm going to go over to simple tree, drop that in here, and I'm going to say leaves. Okay, so what do we want to copy over for our leaves? Okay, I'm going to drop into the simple tree. What do we want to copy over? All right, so okay, we're going to want the scale. So we're going to go for this copy. So for this uniform scale, I'm going to drop this right under leaves. Okay, so that's going to control the scale. Okay, we're good for that. And actually, it's going to give us the label of uniform scale. Let's call this leaf scale. All right. And now we want the color. So we're going to grab the color because our colors can change here. So I'm going to grab the color value and come over here to leaves. And I'm going to change this to value of, well, I'll just leave it a color for the time being here. And then I'm going to hit accept. And then here we go here. Okay, now in my opinion, things are looking okay, but our leaves are still looking kind of sparse. We need more leaves here, gang. So let's go in here and remember that we changed the number of leaves here. We said 1 of 2. Let's just put this to 1 of 0, 1 of 1. Okay, here. And so we have the number of leaves here, so that increases. So let's increase our leaf size to see if this obscures things. Okay, our leaves. Oh, we have our leaf scale. Let's bring this up a little bit. Okay. We have more leaves. And ultimately, I think we need more branches. More branches have more leaves, right? So, okay, I'm sorry, we can actually create more leaves just by going to our resample in our branches. Here it is. And then we can increase or decrease this number, and that's going to give us more leaves. I'm going to decrease this. Okay, so there's a nice smaller number. Okay, yeah, there we have now bukus of leaves. We got lots of leaves here. All right, cool. What we have here, gang, is, I think, a good incarnation of a tree builder. So we have it in here at the top. So let's go ahead and I'm going to save my node type and match current definition. File, save. Okay, now we have a digital asset that is rocking and rolling and ready to go, and we can go and add this along. If we wanted to change the seed, random trees of various shapes and sizes, and then we can control each one of these if we wanted. If we want to get a really long trunk limb and bring it up taller. Oops, I'm pressing the wrong key. Here we have a nice tall long tree. Let's give it some bigger limbs. Okay, there we go. So we have here, okay, so let's have some longer branches. All right, there we go. Okay, great. Now this is starting to look like a tree. Now this isn't a great tree. This is a very simplistic tree. There's more sophisticated ways first, but we'll have to save that for the next lecture. All right, cool. So that's going to end up, I'm going to go ahead and save this. So that's going to pretty much wrap up our lecture here for how to create simple trees. Now, we will continue this on for the next Houdini lecture, but regretfully, we can't meet next week. I'm going to be taking my wifey out for a little bit of birthday celebration, so I'm not going to be able to meet with you guys next week. I am sorry. We'll have to just continue this, but in 2 weeks, come back to this YouTube channel, and we are going to show more of that. Now, if you have any requests, any questions, send emails to chris@techartedu.com. I'll be happy to answer your requests, your comments, your critiques, or you just want to happen to like this channel or give me some love, please go ahead and do it into the YouTube. And watch out for more information about the Orlando Houdini Users Group. More information about that is going to be coming into the future. So keep it open for us, and I'll also put more information about the Houdini certification we're going to strive for. Okay, this pretty much wraps things up. Thank you very much for your attention and time, and I will see all of you folks in 2 weeks for the next Houdini lecture. Bye. Have a great weekend.